Howdy, folks. So, um, here's my ideas why I think One Loft Races are a great way of growing interest in the sport. From day one, I've been a big fan of One Loft Races. 5 months ago, when I first wrote my first piece in the British Homing World and various other publications, I said that I thought they're a great way of getting people interested. And that was proven last weekend at Sean Hunt's Wild Atlantic Way race. You had non-flyers there, people that had never kept a pigeon in their life. Some people just came along for the day. Other people came along and they got birds in the race, but they weren't keeping birds themselves. In addition, like I posted yesterday, we had a guy that had been keeping just some random white pigeons before, but had never been interested in racing before. And as a result of seeing the coverage of the race, was hooked on racing pigeons. So it shows there's an interest there. So I have a kind of a three-phase plan of what I think can be done to expand it wider than it is already. Within the three-phase plan, there's ultimately, if you look at the bigger picture of how we're going to grow this sport back to how we want it to be, there are three levels in my mind of people getting involved with the sport outside of One Loft Races, but it kind of fits in for a minute. And the three levels are, obviously, we want as many people to start keeping birds in their garden and racing them themselves. That's ultimately what we want. But we have to be realistic in our expectations in the numbers that we're going to be able to get in. And ultimately, that level of person, the person that decides they're going to race themselves, keep birds themselves, they're the kind of people that will happen eventually once they've got an interest. So it's kind of like a reverse funnel, as it were. So bringing that into One Loft Races, you've got kind of 2 or 3 ways of getting people interested. You've got the first person that doesn't want to own any birds, but wants to enter birds into One Loft Races. And that can be done either via buying birds off somebody else to enter or coming in through a syndicate, which we'll talk about in a minute. The second type of new person coming in, actually I fit into the category really, because my plan is to set up my own stock loft, eventually being a stud, and specialize in entering birds into One Loft Races. So obviously people keeping, the prospect of somebody keeping half a dozen pairs in their garden, breeding specifically for One Loft Races, is a lot easier sell than somebody keeping birds with the lofts and all the expense needed to race, and the time is the main thing. We have to be realistic on the amount of people that we're going to be able to get racing birds themselves. And that's why I think One Loft Races are great. And the third level of person is that somebody that has no interest in owning birds, but wants birds in the race, like I said. So there's different levels of people. Now, if you look at the numbers with that, actually it's kind of like a reverse funnel, like I said. The category of people right at the top, people that I want to own this bird and enter it into the race. I don't want to keep pigeons, but I'm interested, just like racehorses, right? Potentially, there are tens of thousands of people out there that, if done right, would fit into that category of people. Then kind of level 2, category 2, there'll be a certain portion of those people that think, you know what, I want to start keeping and breeding birds myself to enter into these races. The numbers get smaller, not as many as people not wanting to keep them themselves. People want to keep and breed themselves. And then ultimately a portion of those people will filter down into, you know what, I want to start racing myself. So it's all good for promotion of the sport in general. But we have to be, like I said, we have to be realistic on the numbers, and the numbers of people that we can get in, the mass numbers we need to start racing and taking up the hobby, taking up the sport, and keeping birds in their back garden is lower than the people at the top I'm talking about, where we can get people entering into races, if that makes sense. So they're the kind of three target categories, as it were. So that's that. Now, we've already proven that there's an interest. There was 300 people at that race in Ireland last week. We had people watching from all over the world. We had wives, partners, kids watching the live broadcast of that race. Like I said earlier, we had people there that had never kept a pigeon in their life. They'd come along for the day. We had people that had entered birds via somebody else, and they don't keep birds. So that shows the power these One Loft races have got. And 36,000 viewers later shows the interest is there as well. And not all of those people were pigeon people either. So before I go on to kind of my main plan that I think is the key to this, let's just read some comments. Fred Malone, keep up the promotion of a sport model, Mark. Thank you very much, Fred. Much appreciated, mate. Heyman's, you're a One Loft race player as well. Okay. So here's my take on how we open One Loft racing up more, bigger and better. There's an argument or a complaint, and I saw a thread on it a week or so ago, that One Loft racing excludes some people that simply can't afford to enter into One Loft races. And that's a valid point. And I think over a period of time, you'll get cheaper One Loft races maybe happening, you know, lower entry costs. But in the meantime, syndicates are the key to that. And there's two types of syndicates, going back to what I was saying earlier. So I'm looking at setting up a system where somebody can come to a website and enter into a syndicate. So you've got two types of syndicate. You've got a syndicate of people that want to enter their own birds as part of the syndicate. That's fine. Then you've got a group of people that want to enter this, get in a part of the syndicate, but haven't got birds or want birds entering for them, bred for them. So you've got two types there. And obviously the cost of the people with no birds would be higher because you've got to cover the bird costs and what have you. And then if you split that down more, you've got people that perhaps would want a 3-person syndicate for a 3-bird team, cost being 160 something pound per syndicate spot. But there's absolutely no reason with these syndicates why you can't have a 3-bird or a 6-bird team with 10 or 20 people in that syndicate. For a 3-bird syndicate, for a normal kind of price, a 10-person syndicate would be 50 quid to get a spot on that syndicate. And that lowers the barrier of entry to people getting interested. It lowers it for existing flyers that want to participate, the guys that want to put their own birds in. And also offering them syndicates opens it up to the whole mass general public. Listen, for £50 or £100, depending on what the type of syndicate it is, you can enter a bird into this race and you can have a part of, or 3 birds, whatever it would be, and you can have a part of this syndicate, exactly the same as horse racing. So I think syndicates are a massive part of how we move forward. And I've been looking into how it could operate. It's not actually something that you can kind of get off the shelf to run. You know, you'd need to run it well, and it needs to be semi-automated. But imagine a service that offers syndicates of different types, like I said, own birds or bred birds, let's call it. Right, we've got a syndicate here for the Wild Atlantic, and it's a 3-person syndicate, 3-spot syndicate, with birds, without birds. We've got a 6-bird syndicate, or 2 teams, whatever, for the Who Dares Wins spot. So different syndicates, people can choose their entry level. Ultimately, you could get that. You could probably get it down to about £25 to enter into a syndicate, and as many people can buy. You can buy as many spots as you want. But for one person coming in, it's 25 quid to enter that syndicate. That's what kind of level you get it down. And I think for existing flyers, that's the key. And if organised properly, somebody can think, I want to go in for that, or I want to go with that syndicate based on price, based on different criteria. That being run, I think, is a big key. A big key. So introducing proper syndicates. And I know I was speaking to somebody earlier that runs a syndicate, and they do very well with it, and they've got a waiting list even for certain races. But imagine a syndicate-based system where people can enter. There's a variety of different One Loft races happening around the world. Yes, it takes some setting up again. Everything does that's worthwhile doing. But imagine that would, and then promoting that, not just within the sport, not just to existing flyers. Of course, existing flyers can participate and take advantage of the system and the service. But that then can be expanded out to the mainstream and say, hey, you've heard of horse racing syndicates. Now you've got racing pigeon syndicates. And then you start sharing the kind of videos we shot last week and the excitement, the anticipation of it. You, over time, will get people hooked in this. So that's the first part of it. Let's read some, see if there's any more comments. My point exactly, any got Barry Hearn's phone number? I'm trying to get hold of Barry Hearn. I have been trying, Dave, and it's still on my list. He's somebody still on my list to try and get in touch with. Chantal, don't talk too much. Wink, wink, wink. Sorry, Chantal. I'm looking forward to meeting you one day. Norman Bradley, don't forget there's a One Loft race in Northern Ireland, Mark. It's the North Coast Classic. Okay, I wasn't aware of that, but I will look into it. Martin Mayer, that's a good idea. It is, and that's what I'm looking at. You know, can this be something we can develop in time for the One Loft season, as it were, and you make it accessible to everybody. Like I said, you know, you can have different things. You could have you could have high and low type syndicates. So you could have a 5-team syndicate at the cost of £2,500, but in that 5-team syndicate, for that, you know, for 15 birds flying, you could have it just as 15 people in there. So you've got part of 15 birds flying for 100 quid. You can do a variety of different things. But I'm glad you like it's a good idea, Martin. And thank you for that call yesterday. I was speaking to Martin about German Shepherd dogs, and he's been very gracious in offering Zandy 6 birds out of his national winners, which is amazing. Blown away by generosity of people. Kevin Farrell, yes, that will work. Four Nation Syndicate offer this, all of this. Well, Pete, you were the guy I referenced earlier. We need to talk more. Too many syndicates with 20 and 30 entrants and leaving no room for others to send in the races. Colin, Russell, well, I think the One Loft races I'm aware of are all looking to expand their numbers next year. I know Wild Atlantic, we're looking to go up to 2,000 birds. I know Gary at Who Dares Wins is looking to go up to 1,200 birds. So I get what you're saying, but that kind of comment is only based on where we're at now. And my kind of vision for One Loft, if you look at how many One Loft races happen in China, there are hundreds of One Loft races that happen in China. Hundreds. I'm not saying we'll ever get to that in UK and Ireland, but you know, this is a beginning. I remember going to the South African One Loft race location 20 years ago, or it was the first year of its existence. I remember going to the one in Las Vegas, the one in San Diego, like I said, 20 odd years ago. And that was at the infancy. And now we're kind of at the growth stage. But the reality is, I think there's still a lot there. And there's different type of One Loft races that can happen, you know. One day there'll be a One Loft race where there's only 50 birds in the race. One day I think there'll be yearling and old bird races where birds are kept in for 2, 3, 4 years. And that links into the next thing I'm going to talk about. I get what you're saying, Colin, but, you know, we have to look bigger picture of how I think One Loft Races have the potential to bring mass attention and mass mainstream public into this sport. That's kind of what I'm talking about, and addressing the issue of One Loft Races not being accessible to all flyers. That was one of the conversations that was being had on Facebook last week. You know, a lot of people can't afford £500 for 3 birds, and that's a valid point. Could people afford 50 quid to be a part of a syndicate of 3 birds? That's kind of what we're talking about. Okay, so Kevin said, yeah, I'll get involved. I'll go in the syndicate with you in South Africa, One Loft Race, Mark. All right, Chris, should be a 10 bird limit to give others a chance of entering. But at the end of the day, Colin, these One Loft races are a business. And they're not going to limit entrants. If somebody wants to send 30 birds and they're paying the money, then it's down to the One Loft race organizer and owner to expand their capacity. You know, at the end of the day, these One Loft races are a business, and I just don't see. Now, again, this is what I'm saying. The development of what I will say is about your comment is, I think as we expand, there will be other One Loft races that say, right, 3 bird maximum or 6 bird maximum or whatever. There'll be other ones that develop like that. But at the moment, it's still early stages, especially within Europe of all of this stuff. And you're going to see other things expand. You know, like one day I can see a 50 bird One Loft race where it's one single entry done. But then I can see different variations of it. There's a whole world of different ways this can go. Pete Berry, can't wait to see you cover the RPRA. Yeah, so I've just had a conversation with Pete, who runs the Four Nations Syndicate. And I've had a few people asking me if I'm going to be covering the RPRA One Loft race. And I said, I haven't been invited. And I, despite what my haters and trolls think, I don't just turn up there to make it look like I'm part of it. I was invited to cover the Wild Atlantic, and I've been invited to cover, and I'm working with Gary on the Who Dares Wins. Anyway, cut long story short, without all that drivel, I will be covering the RPRA One Loft final on the 8th of September, live on Facebook. I can say that now. So thanks to Pete for helping that. Again, Derek, a 10 bird limit would be a good idea, but I get what you're saying. But as I say, they're a business and their primary focus is filling up their spots. And until things evolve to where we're oversubscribed, that's realistically not going to happen. Marcel Sanger's on. Derek Walsh on. Marcel Sangers, thank you. Nice to see you in. I'm privileged that you're watching me, Marcel, and I'm looking forward to the day that we meet one day. I'm just going to cover more comments, and then I'm going to tell you about my second plan, which actually on the thread, on the little post I made about I'm going to be doing this, a whole conversation has actually weirdly started off about my second way I think One Loft Racing can go big mainstream. So let me tell you that now, and I'll read some more comments afterwards. Okay, so the second part of my kind of vision or plan for this stuff ultimately is betting. As we all know, the betting market is huge. And as people were saying earlier on, I'm going to give them credit here because they raised some good points, and it's very weird how it happened, because Dave Vincent and Greg Marshall have been having a conversation on my timeline about this very subject. So the idea of betting, and I've spoken to various people about this, the idea of betting within the pigeon sport, obviously people pull birds and what have you, but I'm talking about like a next level thing online, right? Betting being brought into the sport specifically for One Loft Races. The key to betting is data, right? You need the data. And what we have now is a situation where we didn't have 10 years ago, is that we have online, pretty much online data available to us. So through Benzing Live and the other such platforms out there, you know, you can see if your birds come back in, and other people can see the results. And that's the key to it. So imagine instead of people pooling their birds that they own in races, which happens in One Loft Races, it happens in normal races as well. And for anybody watching this, by the way, that's anti One Loft Races, I'm not saying One Loft Races is the only way that we can expand and grow the sport to get it thriving again. I'm not saying it's the only thing, but I really do think it's a big part of it and a big thing. So coming back to betting, imagine being able to bet online on a race. Now, realistically, I'm not a bookmaker. I'm good at maths, but I'm not that good at maths. And there's a whole bunch of mathematics in bookmaking. If there's any bookmakers on there that watch this, I would love to speak to you. Now, obviously, let's use the example of last weekend's race. 523 birds coming back from a race. You are not going to be able. You could specifically bet. There could be a way where you can essentially pull your own bird online, but you know, there'd be a pool type thing potentially. But for mainstream betting, unless you've got, like I said earlier, One Loft Races of 20, 30, 40 birds, and they perhaps happen every week, and that's where it might go down one day. But for a typical One Loft race at the moment, you are not going to be able to bet. It's not realistic to be able to make a book, which is essentially what you would want to do, betting on individual birds. That may come down the line with some changes that happen through the evolution of One Loft Races, but what we're talking about is this. Imagine the different markets that could be made for betting. So you could bet on the country of the winning bird, the time of the bird. You could bet on the speed and a whole bunch of other things. You could bet on the owner of the bird, you know? So I think XYZ's, one of XYZ's birds going to win. There's a whole bunch of markets you could do. So basically, imagine that and online. So how Betfair started and made their money was by essentially other people betting against each other, peer-to-peer, and Betfair just take a cut. That's ultimately what I would like to see evolve. Now, betting's not easy. You need a license, gaming license, and various countries around the world offer them and what have you. This is not a simple setup. But imagine being able to go to a website or a mobile app and bet on a variety of different markets, on a variety of different one-off races. Now, combined with people being able to enter birds themselves into these races and bet on them, that right there is kind of phase 3 of how I see One Loft Races going, and more importantly, how you get that mass mainstream interested. Yes, it's a long-term plan. Yes, it's going to be hard work, but I think a combination of what I've talked about is the future of One Loft Racing, and more importantly, the future of bringing mass numbers interested. There's a lot of sports that get mass coverage now. Darts is massive now. Golf's always been big. Horse racing's always been big. But the likes of greyhound racing, they have their own TV channels for greyhound racing now. Now, yes, you've got some issues when you start talking about live coverage and stuff like that. You've got a big issue in nobody bloody knows when the bird's coming back for a start. So you've got a whole time to fill. And then if you watched me last week, you hear me talking as much as I can to not pee people off, but keep people interested in talking about different stuff. But you've got a whole time gap there. But there are certain things within it that you can do until the actual race happens. There are a couple of things. One, you could have very much smaller races in between the big one, like horse people do. Horse racing has 6 horse races. There's the big one, but then there's the follow-up races. You could have small, short distance races with all the electronic systems out there now. You could have it that, yes, you might have crossovers of birds and what have you, but you could have smaller races. That's just one idea to fill that time gap between the final race. And then you can start combining what I've been doing with the Facebook Lives, and people can tune in and people can bet on it, and people have got syndicates. That there as a package is, I think, has got the potential long term to bring tens of thousands of people in. And that's my ideas. And everything I've suggested with time, money, and the right people on board can be done. I can do that. Exactly, Kevin. It's about promoting the sport to gain interest, and that's what it's about. Fred Malone, the coverage you had at the Atlantic race was brilliant, and these races need live commentary. Are you talking to the crowd, having a crack? One laugh, get the neighbours involved. Exactly, Fred. And that's what happened, and that's what it's about. Jeremy, pleased to see you online, mate. I look forward to meeting you. Norm Bradley, yeah, the more entrants, the bigger the prize fund. Exactly. Jeremy Davis, I need a cigar. I will be bringing you one to the final. That's part of the deal, mate. Martin Shepherd, private enterprise is the only mechanism that works for the individual. Private enterprise and business represents the way forward for any organization. I completely agree, Martin. I absolutely agree. Private enterprise needs to be doing this. I agree. I've always been passionate about One Loft Races. And I think they're a big part. And I know some people don't like them. It's not real racing. We're not saying they're going to replace normal racing. We're saying to get mainstream interest and tens of thousands of people hooked into our sport, this can help a lot. Do the RPRA have a live feed? The RPRA, Malabar, sorry guys. The RPRA one-off live feed. Chris, well, they do now because I'm going and doing it. Yeah, Greg. Benzing have. I need to speak to Thomas from Benzing. We've been on our list trying to get together to speak for a while. Yeah, you're right. Benzing have live feed for clocking. So combine their technology with a betting platform and a syndicate platform as well for the data info. That's what you need. John, I think it's the only way. I know you're a big proponent of it, mate. Me too. And we need to meet up, John. No commentary on it, Mark, which Mark does. And they are, well, some people like the commentary, some don't. I even set up a separate live stream to our page, a Racing Pigeon International page for the race last week, just on the loft, so people didn't have to hear me talking. They had the option of watching the loft and the birds come back, or me talking, each to their own. Exactly, John. It could be a tote type thing. Exactly, it could be a tote type thing as well. Certainly to get started, it could be. Stephen, only the winners will be the bookmaker. Obviously, as a commercial enterprise, there needs to be a profit. But like Johnson said, it could be set up as a tote. There could be tote prizes. And again, the person running it, I'm that. I already have the domain name for this, by the way, guys, because it's been on my mind for ages. But yeah, a tote system could work quite well. Like you say, it's just a pool. Undercards, exactly, Greg. You'll have undercard races. So why can't we have a 30-mile race? And I know people say there's no competition in a 30-mile race. We're not talking about the main race being that. We're talking about pre-races. While people are waiting, you've got a couple of races happening to keep that interest in there, which are bettable on. Cheers, Jeremy. I'll be up for the final event now. It's going to integrate that. Chris. It is, Jeremy. One Loft Racing is. I'm really looking forward to meeting you, Jeremy. I'll be there for the One Loft Race, the RPRA One Loft Race, Chris says. Darren Roberts, I just sent you a message on Messenger about Bulgaria one-off trip. All right, mate. I'll catch up. I'm about 50, 60 messages behind, but I will catch up. I promise, mate. I've had to apologise to people. I've just been bombarded. Negative comments against about pigeon racing, not who makes a profit. Everyone's going to, like I said in my first British Homing World article, which was an epic one, 4 pages. In some magazines it was 6. There's nothing wrong with profit. There's nothing wrong with money. And like somebody said earlier, private enterprise and business is the thing that's going to drive this business forward, right? There's too much red tape in the hierarchy of organizations. It's not going to happen. Private enterprise, forward-thinking, revolutionary stuff is going to bring this sport forward. And ultimately, as a byproduct of that, people will earn money. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I'm a capitalist entrepreneur, always have been, always will be, and I know it probably is easy for me to say. There's nothing wrong with money. Like I said in my first article, £1 million pigeons are great for this sport. Doesn't mean you got to compete with them, and I still say a £50 bird has got as much capability of competing against a £500 bird. Case in point, the winner of the Wild Atlantic last week wasn't like a like a pedigree bird and a big starry pedigree bird. The geezer bred it himself and it won 17 minutes ahead of birds that cost 500 quid. I know there was birds worth 500 quid in that race because I know some of the people that were racing them. That bird ultimately was a 50, maybe £100 bird. I don't know how it was bred. It won the race against what would be classed as more pedigree birds or more expensive birds. I digress. First day's pigeon. All right, we've got people having private conversations on the thing, so I got to pass forward. I'll get through race again. One Loft Race, same feed. Exactly, it's a true race. Everybody's treated the same. I may be going to the Algarve one, Lee. Maybe we'll see. Okay, so they're my thoughts. Different levels of people keeping or being interested in birds. Imagine a situation where people can go in and buy a pair of young birds and enter them into One Loft Race. They don't even have to keep them, look after them, or anything. Then we move on to syndicates. Right, we want to enter our own birds as this syndicate at this money. Right, we don't want to enter our own birds. We want the birds breeding for us, and we want to go into these syndicates, these different races. That's possible, viable, and it can really open it up. It opens up existing flyers that can't afford £500 for a team of 3, and it opens it up to mainstream public. That's what I think. And the second part is the gambling. I think, obviously, there's the bigger picture argument that the sport's got to be recognized as a sport. The gambling thing is not easy to do. That's a bigger money thing to do because it needs doing properly and licensing and what have you. But imagine them two things combined with the power One Loft Races and the development process that's going to happen. like I said, in China, they have hundreds of One Loft races. And from what I know, my limited knowledge, I haven't gone there yet, I'm going in November, they have like smaller One Loft races. They have all kinds of different ones. So the business or the game of One Loft races will evolve over time. But combine the power of syndicates, a proper syndicate formation system, and betting, I think that is the key to long-term getting a lot of people interested. Because at the end of the day, people who like to bet, they'll bet on anything. And we've got a massive opportunity. I don't smoke cigars all the time. I only smoke cigars when I'm stressed or I'm relaxing, and I'm neither, Jeremy. So you caught me smoking one last week, but my main thing is being a vapor. When I concentrate, I forget to vape, Chris. Greg says he bought two 2017 youngsters out of One Loft RPRA One Loft race sale. At the end of the race, both have been top 5 feds finished. Exactly. These birds they prove their worth. Like, I'm interested to see what that number 1 bird goes for out of the the Who Dares Wins, because it was 17 minutes ahead, and she's a canny bird. Exactly, William McNulty. One Loft racing is the future of pigeon racing. Everybody has an equal opportunity. Norman Bradley, during the race itself, while waiting on the birds, you could talk to the pigeon fanciers, hate the word fanciers, flyers, sorry, Norman, on site about their views on the sport, where from what type of systems they use, or maybe some way of big pigeon supply companies paying for advertising. Yeah, there's all of that available, mate. All of that, and a lot more. Matthew Mason, these races are great for fanciers. I hate the word fanciers, but I know everybody uses it. Who can no longer keep pigeons. Exactly. There were some of those people there, Matthew. There were some people there, I believe, that weren't keeping pigeons anymore for health reasons or whatever, but they were there and they loved seeing the birds come in. Exactly. They can still enjoy the sport. So, they're my thoughts on it. Give me your feedback. Let me know what you think. And it's more food for thought and more things for me to think about how we can get this rolling. So that's it. I'm going to be covering the RPRA One Loft final on the 8th of September. Prior to that, I'm going to be at Gary Tomlinson's Who Dares Wins final on the 25th, which is 2 weeks tomorrow. Next week, I'm going to be talking more about the Pigeon Sport Future Foundation that we're setting up, and a whole bunch more. Thank you for watching. I'm going to go and finish up and then actually do a bit of chilling. Oh, hang on, I've got some more comments in. John, One Loft Races, although good for winners, maybe it's the buzz if your birds get through to the final. It is. I mean, it's a buzz to get, my single entry into Gary's race is not around at the moment, but the buzz is just there of having it. Yeah, exactly. I've seen so many of these races where birds drop and set up and can come in the second flock and beat others. Very frustrating for fanciers. They recognise their birds and they sit there whilst others go in. I think that's just part of the game, John. Mark is already there in club racing every week. Big small clubs like horse racing. It is, but expand that up to the mainstream, Paul, and imagine that on a website where anybody anywhere in the world can access it and do it. That's what we're talking about. Promote wearing a mask. Cheers, Pete. Speak to you soon. Okay, guys, thank you for watching. Give me your comments. Give me your thoughts, criticisms, feedback, positive stuff, whatever. And I would really appreciate whatever your thoughts are. And to those that are waiting on Facebook messages from me, I promise I'm catching up. Thanks for catching me tonight. It's 20 past 10 now on a Saturday night. So thanks for those that have been watching. And I will catch you soon. Keep flying, guys. Be lucky.